Coming up today on Locked On at Texas Tech, it was a homecoming fandango from United Supermarkets Arena with the Aerators picking up the dub. We get to that. Also, beating a dead horse and 50-yard line watch. Next on Locked On Texas Tech.
You are Locked On Texas Tech, your daily podcast on the Texas Tech Red Raiders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We're going to start this thing off right. Everything runs through Lubbock.
Great to see you again on Locked On Texas Tech on the Locked On Podcast Network. Always appreciate being your first listen on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts. He's the only Chris Level. I'm Casey Cowan. And Chris, we are back today kicking off the show on the hardwood and talking about a win as game one of the basketball tournament for your Aerators is now behind us. They open up victorious over the Purple Hearts team. It was a nice environment at United Supermarkets Arena. And, man, I was feeling some things I didn't really anticipate feeling, just seeing some of those favorites from years gone by. In some cases, many years gone by. The only ones I was missing was, I don't know, Lance Hughes, Cliff Owens, Jason Sasser, some if you want to really dial it back. But what a night at the USA. I'm sure you had a ball, and we got to see them actually get a win. So back at it on Friday night. But, man, that was a one-of-a-kind experience, I think, for a Texas Tech basketball fan.
Yeah, I got there a little after 6 o'clock. The New Mexico and Texas game, basically, I think Austin Zone and the Enchanted were their actual team names. They had just started. I just didn't know what to expect whenever I was just going to watch this thing, or what kind of buzz would be in the building or whatever. And the first thing you notice when you start watching like that other game is that these are grown men. These are adults. This is not 18-year-old freshmen. There's some of these guys that have been in the pro ranks for 5 to 10 years, sometimes longer. And there's some younger guys too, but it's a different level of basketball. Some guys are in better shape than others. Some guys are just enormous individuals compared to others. I mean, and so that was like the first thing. I'm like, well, this is different than I guess I just hadn't thought about it that way. But then as the crowd started to build and that the Aerators team came onto the floor for the first time and the crowd was excited, it was just because, I mean, I've heard Todrick say, I never thought I would get to play in front of these people ever again in this building, especially. And like somebody like him, he I think his parents last night got to watch him play live for the first time in 8 years. Because, you know, where some of these guys are playing, it's just not financially feasible to, you know, for parents or in-laws or whoever it may be to go set up shop and go spend a week or whatever with traveling around, or, you know, and so a lot of them don't get to play in front of their families. I know that Todrick wasn't alone in having some of his family in the house last night, but I loved it, man. I had a ball. I think those kids, players, everybody, I think they just enjoyed the heck out of themselves. And again, you're right. I mean, what was it? 83-64. Yeah, I think like was the final score. And so again, a semi-comfortable win. I think you were kind of out in front for the most part all night. Really did a good job of taking care of the basketball. And my man, John Robertson, I mean, that guy, oldest guy out there probably between the two teams, smallest guy out there between the two teams, probably the best guy out there between the two teams. And I don't say that lightly because there's a lot of time. I mean, Matt Mooney was so good. Tariq Owens was so good. Davion Warren had his flashes, and but Zach Smith, kind of showed you some things. But John was just, I mean, people forget, man. He was like a double-digit scorer for 4 years under Bob and Pat Knight, and he turned it over a little bit too much learning how to be a point guard in the Big 12, but he was like a 40% three-point shooter, on average his entire 4-year career. And I think he was just before his time. You look at Marquise Noel last year. Look at what Pop Isaacs now for the Red Raiders, is smaller guards. The game is a bit different now than it was when he was playing from let's see, I think it was like '08 to 2011 or something. I mean, he's been gone for a while, and he
Yep.
hadn't seen any of this, facility upgrade. I mean, all this stuff. But it was fun to watch him do his thing. Epitome of efficiency.
Yeah, my wife was not familiar. She was doing the Shaq meme. I have to apologize to you, John Robertson. I was not familiar with your game because she's asking me in warmups, "Who's the little guy?
That is
Who's
so
the
well
little
done.
guy?" And
I
I'm
love
telling her this is probably gonna be the leading scorer. And then bang bang, I think the first points for the Aerators was a 3-point shot from John. I don't know, 150 feet from the basket. I mean, it looked just like it looked back in '08, '09, whenever that was. And Chris, that was one of the things that struck me was like the skill set, the way a guy looks playing basketball. Everybody's got their own unique kind of look, right? Or their flow or whatever. But you attribute it to like this guy, like this is what Matt Mooney looks like playing basketball. And I could spot that from anywhere. He could wear a bag over his head. I would know that that's Matt Mooney. And to see him doing the same things he used to do, the ball handling, some finishes at the rim there. Nifty, I think is what you have to call some of the finishes. Some of the defense as well, which I thought maybe the Purple Hearts team kind of forgot that they had to play defense within TBT basketball. I don't know, but it was just fun to watch those guys and remember, oh yeah, this is what he looks like, as a basketball player, and one of a kind. And obviously not just Matt, but John. And, one of the dream combinations I've always wished we had some overlap with was the tandem of Zach Smith and Tariq Owens, because Zach Smith was Tariq Owens prior to Tariq Owens being Tariq Owens.
It's like this. It's like the Spider-Man meme.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
Yeah.
They're built like two Tim Burton characters. I mean, the longest guys you've ever seen. They are. I don't know where Dwaylon Roberts was, but he's another guy in that category. I mean, I always wish, like, damn, I wish you could have just got one season where you had those two guys mixing it up together, and you got to see them mix it up last night.
Yeah, I mean, and I enjoyed. First of all, I told my partner that I was doing the games with Haxton. I said I'm enjoying watching you watch John Robertson because he had never seen him. I also enjoyed watching Zach Smith watch Tariq Owens because there were several like smiles and like, oh man, I mean, because Zach is usually this guy.
Yeah.
But he's watching Tariq do stuff that he usually does, but maybe doing it a bit better. And I mean, just the block shots, swallowing people up at the rim, and then just catching alley-oops. That's when that game really turned the corner last night. They really started to pull away when I watched Matt Mooney a couple of times potentially pass up an open look and then beat you with the pass. And a couple of those to Tariq Owens. And I thought, okay, look out. They start really sharing the ball like this and being unselfish. This other team doesn't have a chance. It'd be a bad night to be wearing purple in the USA. And then, John Robertson's doing the same thing. And to Davide Moretti's credit, he was coming off of a long flight from Italy the day before, didn't get in until, I don't know, about 24 hours before game time. Probably jet lagged. I think got a lot of shots up and things like that. But you just could tell he wasn't quite himself. But he was trying to get other guys involved too. He committed there was a few turnovers there, but he was trying to get Jordan Tolbert, on some of the pick and rolls and things like that. But again, it was being unselfish. The mindset was certainly there. But they played the better part of 3 quarters with just turning the ball over one time, and that's this team would practice I think 4 times. In a setting like this, and there's some legit teams in this deal, man. I mean, I started watching some of that last night, and you start following the other regions and things like that, and there's some legit first-round draft pick type people that have played. They're playing for either their alma mater or playing for a cause, whatever. There's all kinds of reasons why teams are getting put together, but I just felt like that was a celebration of Texas Tech basketball in that building last night, and I'm inject it straight into my veins. I'm ready for more.
Yeah, and we got to double it up crowd size wise. I think there was a little less than 4,000 there. The record like 7,800, if I'm not.
Wichita State,
100, yeah, something like that.
Yeah,
between 7,000 and 8,000, and I'm not so sure. Maybe you can't pull that off on Friday night, especially after how much fun it was Wednesday night. Before we leave this, Chris, it wasn't just the guys in the uniform. It was fun to see, but what was the other cavalcade of all-stars that was there? Because I know it was like there was Keenan, there was Zaire. I mean, there was Aaron Ross. There was a long list.
It was like an autograph signing going on down there. Like, I mean, and I just you had the current Texas Tech team there, obviously, and Coach McCaslin was there. But yeah, Jay Crockett, Aaron Ross, Adonis Arms, who kind of refereed a little kids game there,
which is a great game, by the way.
Absolutely. Yeah, Zaire Smith, who I had not seen previously in the week, and then obviously Jarrett Culver and Keenan was there. Robert Lewandowski, Tanner Ogden, even guys that aren't necessarily super familiar or that people are super familiar with, that played a part and for this program for several seasons. Yeah, it was just, and I'm sure, and Norrance obviously a mainstay. I'm sure I'm forgetting some folks, but that is just, this is the most unique thing because there's never been anything like this for everybody to come back to that kind of sinks their teeth into it. And I'm telling you that this kind of Aerators deal, some of these guys we're sitting here mentioning their names potentially are going to play for this team in the years to come.
Yeah.
I think that this thing is not going anywhere anytime soon. I'm even sitting over there thinking like, looking at Warren Washington going, hey man, this might be you in 2 or 3 years, and he's a current Red Raider, but I'm just thinking this thing has a chance to, because I don't know if you knew this, they actually had so much interest and they kind of had to make some tough decisions on who they added to this deal. But there was actually some interest in why don't we just enter 2 teams, and I think they ultimately decided, no, I don't think that's best. Let's put our best foot forward with 1, focus our resources on 1 and all that stuff. But still, I just, the who's who that was in the building last night from a Texas Tech back. Bubba Jennings was there. He texted me in the middle of the game, hey man, I see you down, and it's just
if you think he can't step out there and shoot 40% from beyond the arc right now, you're lying to yourself.
And 95% or better from the free throw line.
That's right.
I mean,
he's going to be insulted by the 95. Make it 98.
Absolutely. So I just, because there's nothing that's ever taken place that really has brought the current and the previous together like this, and I just, man, I was here for it, and I can't wait for more tomorrow night.
Yeah, so that's Friday night. They'll be back at it, and that was one thing that really stood out to me was just the thought that say Matt Mooney, you go on national championship game run, national runner-up, you become a Red Raider legend, and then you're never back in the building. And in a celebratory way. I mean, you may come back for a game or whatever, but the last time you're playing in a Tech uniform, you're in Minneapolis. I mean, you're not back at the USA on the other side of your legend becoming cemented, if that makes sense. So I thought it was a cool opportunity to get those guys back in. You're like, hey, you remember us? We remember you. I mean, there's a standing ovation when they came out in the warm-ups. Guys. So I'm like, oh yeah, we remember these guys. I thought that part of it was really, really cool because you don't get a chance to go back like that.
You had 6 guys from the Final Four team on this roster. It would have been, and then you had Jarrett Culver in the stands and Norrance standing over there watching. So that was 7 and 8. Brandon Francis would have joined this team, but his professional league and his professional commitment is still like ongoing right now. He just couldn't step away because he's still in the midst of playing games. But I mean, you theoretically had your arms around the bulk of that 2019 Final Four team that was one, possession away from winning the entire thing. And if that doesn't get you going, I don't know what would. Because talking to John Robertson about him being this alum and being overseas and watching his alma mater almost make it, and then he's like, and now I get to play with some of these guys. It was just kind of like your worlds are colliding. Although that's right. That's not a George Costanza negative connotation. It was just like small world, or I don't know, comes full circle. I don't know how you want to phrase it, but it just, good stuff, man.
Man, and speaking of overseas professional commitments, I don't know what league Moretti's playing in, but do they just play all their games on the beach? Homeboy's coming back looking like David Hasselhoff.
Yeah,
wow, who's that guy?
Yeah, he's been in the sun. Yeah,
man, can't wait for that Friday night to resume as the Aerators are back on the floor. You win again, back at it on Sunday, so could be a really fun weekend in the LBK from United Supermarkets Arena. And of course, we'll have plenty on that on the other side of the weekend after the dust has settled. Okay, coming up ahead, we're switching gears. We're back to football. Horses that are dark. We discuss next on Locked On Texas Tech. First, today's episode brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. And in this day and age, every new hire can feel like a huge gamble. And when we're talking about your business or livelihood, that's not ideal. But LinkedIn Jobs is here to help by helping you find the best qualified candidates available fast and for free, all on one easy-to-use and secure platform. Simple but specific targeting tools allow you to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to consider. They go beyond just resume data by using insights from your job post, company, and their 875 million member profiles to put your post in front of the most qualified candidates faster than anyone else. So go to linkedinjobs.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedinjobs.com/lockedoncollege today to identify the most qualified candidates and connect with them fast and for free. Just like a bad hire could sink your ship, the right hire could take your business to new heights this year. And it's no coincidence that small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. It's so easy. Even a podcast host could do it. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free today with LinkedIn Jobs. Terms and conditions apply. Thanks for making Locked On Texas Tech a part of your day. Always appreciate being your first listen on YouTube or wherever you got this podcast, right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Chris, as we now turn our attention back to the football program and back to the fall, we asked a couple of weeks ago, is the hype for Texas Tech annoying everyone? Is there going to be a backlash? Well, I don't think there was some general consensus necessarily to that question, but it seemed like Texas Tech was annoying folks yesterday, and it wasn't our fault. People do not like to hear the name Texas Tech mentioned among contenders, it seems like. What was happening yesterday as a dark horse conversation was taking place on national television, and along with Penn State, Texas Tech was mentioned as a college football playoff possibility. And then, well, the weeping and the gnashing of teeth just commenced from coast to coast, it seemed like.
Yeah, I saw. So this came across my timeline yesterday morning-ish. I think Heather Dinich, who, has worked with Kirby Hocutt very well. Heather Dinich is basically tasked with covering the college football playoff committee and the selection and the process, and she covers it at the top of the food chain. These are the playoff contenders. This is how they're selecting them. This is who's on this committee, all these things. Anyway, she was at SEC Media Days and I guess doing a live TV hit. And, the conversation came up about just off the radar playoff contenders for this year. Now, granted, we don't have an expanded playoff this year. You're still at 4 for just the one more season. But she offered up unprompted, if you want a really dark horse candidate, then I'm gonna tell you that Texas Tech is that. And she kind of, suggested that there's a ton of money being pumped into the program. All true. Didn't really get into any more details about, roster specifics or Joey or the quarterback or they're really good on defense, whatever. She just kind of, it's pretty clear though that, Texas Tech is now semi top of mind awareness for a lot of folks. But then she went on to go on about Penn State being another dark horse candidate and because of their offensive line and all that stuff. Anyway, and so the comment is made, and I go on Sirius Big 12 radio often, and one of their producers, I guess, saw the same tweet, and he's like, if Texas Tech makes the playoff, I'll eat a live cockroach. I mean, so there was a lot of commentary. I saw somebody, some TCU fans say TCU's one of 3 different conferences in the last 15 years. Texas Tech went 13-16 with Patrick Mahomes at quarterback. These programs are completely different play. So you're definitely on the radar. You're drawing people off sides. I don't know how much of this is your own fault. But there are clearly doubters, and I'm telling you, man, that 1-2 punch at the beginning of the season is going to tell so much of the story. If you struggle in either one of those games or don't end up at 2-0, there's going to be so many people that before your season has even really gotten going and you have played a conference game, they're going to say, "See, I told you," kind of deal. Because you stumble in either one of those two games, you are no longer a playoff candidate anymore.
Right.
You would have to really be close to perfect to earn your right to be back into that conversation. You just wouldn't have much margin for error at that point. And I think those first two games are really going to tell us a lot. And those are not that far away from happening as you and I sit here and talk. I mean, NFL's about to report for training camp, and we're about to get underway here pretty close.
It's about to be on and popping, to use an industry term. Take it easy on us. It's not our fault. Don't beat a dark horse. Take it out on Heather or whoever, your Twitter friends, whatever. Leave the Red Raiders alone, okay? We're just doing our thing, minding our business. Conversation for another day. That I do like to hear, though, how often the cash infusion, the resource investment, or the NIL effort is being mentioned in tandem with Texas Tech, I think is excellent. And I'll expand more on that in shows to come. But not surprised to hear that once again as an attributing factor as to why Texas Tech could find some success. And it's becoming a consistent theme. It will have to be if you really want to contend for something special. Okay, we're going to stick with the football program, but put on your hard hat because we're headed to Jones Stadium coming up next for a look around. Do a little scatter shooting. What's happening over at the Jones? After this on Locked On Texas Tech. Glad to have you along for the ride on Locked On Texas Tech with Chris. I'm Casey, coming to you from west of the 100th Meridian, where it's really going down. The opposite of that, going up, as in a new building over at Jones Stadium. Let's scatter shoot a little bit here because I got a couple of things on my mind as it relates to what's happening at Jones Stadium. Obviously, South End Zone construction is ongoing, taking some form, but will be ongoing, obviously, through the 2023 season. But, Chris, maybe I'm just a nerd who pays too much attention to Texas Tech things. I don't know. That's why we're here doing a daily podcast, I guess, after all. But this is actually interesting to me, the fact that for the first time, ever, visitor accommodations are going to be adjusted in Jones Stadium from the southeast corner to, I believe, the northeast corner. Get me right here if I'm wrong on any of this. This year, they'll be housed in some, probably, I guess, what you may describe as construction site trailer buildings combined together to make locker rooms, blah, 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 blah. Going to be on the northeast out there, and that's never been the case. It's going to be quite a different look when you actually get all this settled, I guess, a year from now. But as someone who has traversed the south end of Jones Stadium right before kickoff on a scooter, packing a wife, I can tell you a little more leg room there, getting those buses out of the way. I'm all about, because that is a treacherous time. And maybe there's a tall boy or two in each hand. I don't know. But that actually is really interesting to me. And I'm curious to see what it's going to look like when they truly have it in place, where I guess we'll get an entrance and a tunnel or something of some sort now, eventually in the northeast corner, correct?
Yeah, you will. When all is said and done, your team will enter through the end zone on the south side, like in the center.
Gotcha.
It won't be in one of the corners, the tunnels are now. It'll be the Tech team will kind of roll right through the center, and then you're right, northeast corner. But there will be a tunnel, and a locker room, and some of these. This is big picture stuff that it is not easily, or easy to do, because you've got to go cut a hole into the stadium, and there's some serious construction, but I think that's something that they will do after this season. And the reason is, I think you touched on it. The reason is because it's very congested right there on the south end, specifically the south, southeast corner.
Yeah.
After a game, because see, after the games are over, I'll go up that visitors tunnel and I'll go across the street because I would typically do my head coach interview over in that building. Now, last year we didn't just because of the way Joey kind of had redone it. But previously I would go up that tunnel and across the street, and you've got visiting fans visiting, they're waiting by the buses, and it's just, I think it's crowded, one, and two, I think you're adding some layers for something bad to happen, by kind of mixing your fan bases, and I think the Tech folks felt like, okay, if we get a chance to really hit the reset button, we want this south end to be kind of opened up and a true thoroughfare to where it really becomes, not just tech friendly, but just kind of a safe spot and a bigger spot to kind of. And so they just wanted to move them on the access road, of Marcia Sharp over there, and they can have their buses over there, and they're just away from everything. And there's
the Domino's parking lot across the freeway. That's fine. Get over there.
Yes.
There aren't these big fancy UT billboards, $1 million buses right outside the FTF. Yeah. I think that's actually a great idea, and it's probably just an undertaking that was far too large to ever do it just in and of itself. But like you said, they have an opportunity now to shift some things around. So I think that's actually going to be quite the advantage, or not advantage, but benefit for Tech fans whenever the dust is settled. It's going to be a really cool spot, and it'll be all double T all the time now, southeast corner, before, during, and after the game. And, of course, Chris, as we now have some new turf laid, not entirely. We're still waiting for the south end to get a little more cleaned up, I guess, as we get closer to the season. But Coach McGuire tweeted out a picture not too long ago, some new turf being laid, I guess, beginning on the north end of the field. 50-yard line remains blank, but 50-yard line watch remains white hot here on Locked On Texas Tech. And the flame gets even a little hotter. I'm playing it up till I can't anymore. Whenever I believe, I don't know, was it Don Williams, the Tulia Rose, asking somebody about what would be at the 50-yard line. And according to his tweet, a Tech official says they're not ready to release those details yet.
And it's, I will tell you, I think that decision has been made months and months ago.
Yeah,
they start designing, as were the end zones. That's just kind of how this stuff works. The folks that will be tasked with sewing that in and putting that in, or they've already known and are well aware of what will go
so
down.
There's a turf seamstress out there somewhere that knows the answer. Let's get our investigative reporters out looking for this gal. And if there is an alternative, Chris, may I offer up here behind me over my left shoulder, Locked On Texas Tech podcast logo. Anybody interested? What would that cost?
Yeah, I hadn't thought about, I hadn't thought about like the Masked Rider, that official logo, like with the double T in the background and the horse kind of up.
Well, I'm sure you've seen too, without the double T. Like, what was that? The 70s, I think. It was just the Masked Rider logo. That's already been there once.
Yes.
Curious to see if they'll switch it up. And I don't care too much. I don't care too little. I care an appropriate amount, just for anybody questioning my level of interest in things like 50-yard line watch.
This is why we love college sports, though, because people do care. People care about what uniform you're wearing on Saturday.
Right.
Why don't they bring back the throwback? I mean, the people do care, and you can't fault them for caring, because this is why we all love this stuff so much.
And Chris Level just said it. You can't fault me for caring, so I don't want to see anybody in the YouTube comments faulting me for caring, or really anything. Let's play nice, folks. All right, Chris, we'll be back around again coming up tomorrow to wrap up the week. We'll set the table for more Aerators action, and maybe hear from a listener or viewer or two on tomorrow's show, man. Looking forward to it.
I'm intrigued, Cowan. I'm intrigued by who we might hear from here. I can't wait.
All right, for Chris Level, I'm Casey Cowan. Thanks for joining us once again, and make sure you're subscribed on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts so you never miss an episode. And we'll see you for the next one right back here on Locked On Texas Tech.